Hi, and welcome back to Better Self Books, the channel that shares knowledge for comprehensive self-development through great books. There is a person like this, someone without a specific name, who is both pitiful and detestable, yet also ridiculous. That person is Ah Q. Surely, most of you are familiar with the character Ah Q from Lu Xun's classic novel. The true story of Ah Q. We've all chuckled at this character, but behind that laughter, you might suddenly recognize the image of an adult who is also pitiful, detestable, and ridiculous. This reality has always existed authentically in society. There is an Ah Q in each of us. If you understand Ah Q, you can also realize three truths about life. These are the three truths that help you reflect on your own limitations, your past, and your wounds, so that you can stand up strong from the stupor of life. Everyone has self-anesthetized with the spirit of victory. Ah Q is someone from the very bottom of society. No family name, no hometown, no house, no stable job. A person with these 6 negatives would naturally be despised by many in society. Yet, Ah Q feels no shame, treating it as normal. One time, Ah Q drank 2 bowls of wine, danced around wildly, and boasted to everyone that he was related to the old master of the Zhao family, a man of high status in the village, whom everyone respected. Ah Q calculated meticulously that, based on rank, he was 3 generations senior to the young scholar, Master Zhao's son. Upon hearing this, the elder Master Zhao rushed over and gave him a resounding slap. Ah Q, you scoundrel! How dare you claim to be related to me? Ah Q fell silent, not daring to talk back, willingly losing his own name. But not long after, he rationalized it in his mind. My son in the future will surely be much more successful. Ah Q became cheerful again. He remained cheerful like that, even though he lived a precarious existence, not knowing if he would survive until the next day. This was because he possessed a magical weapon, the spirit of victory. When Ah Q was beaten and had no strength to fight back, he would wait for the person to leave, and then declare silently in his heart, "The one who just hit me is my son." This world has really gone to the dogs. Just like that, Ah Q could continue to be happy. One day, Ah Q was arrested but showed no panic. He told himself that perhaps sometimes a person just has to be arrested and imprisoned like this. Even when Ah Q truly tasted the bitterness of failure, he still smiled. That time, Ah Q was lucky enough to win a lot of money from gambling, but it was snatched away from him. So, Ah Q slapped himself. The feeling was as if he had just hit his opponent. Then, satisfied, Ah Q fell asleep. In short, no matter what happened, Ah Q could always find a self-serving explanation to build a world where he was always spiritually victorious. In that world, a weakling like Ah Q could separate himself from the society of that time. The spirit of victory became the key psychological defense mechanism that allowed Ah Q to retain the last bit of joy in his impoverished life. Some say that given Ah Q's poor background and difficult circumstances, how could he survive if he weren't so optimistic? But is Ah Q truly happy, truly optimistic? It's not just this character. Even in our modern era, you will find many people who still can't distinguish between true optimism and confidence, and self-anesthetization, Ah Q style. That is why the spirit of victory appears everywhere, and Ah Q lies hidden in everyone's heart, occasionally jumping out to perform a monologue. When failing an exam, they think, "This exam was a bit too challenging," or "I wasn't feeling well, so I didn't perform well." When making a mistake at work and being criticized by a colleague, thoughts like "I don't need this job anyway," or "They're just jealous of me" echo in many people's minds. When seeing others succeed, some people think they were just lucky to have family support. When in conflict with others, some will protect themselves by belittling the other person or exaggerating their own advantages, and so on. These words of comfort may seem to soothe our self-esteem, but they cannot deceive our true selves. Ah Q's spirit of victory is a combination of 3 parts anger, 3 parts resentment, and 4 parts self-compromise. Therefore, the simplest way to tell if you are deceiving yourself spiritually like this character is to examine whether the words you speak are filled with anger or resentment, and whether you are finding excuses to escape reality and justify yourself in the face of obstacles. Injecting a dose of anesthetic to feel like you're not a failure is always easy, but the easier it is, the more dangerous it becomes. Gradually, it will keep us in a state of psychological slumber, burying us in a shell, and separating us from true growth and transformation. Therefore, when facing something that displeases or upsets you, don't be quick to anger, don't be quick to complain, and certainly don't make excuses, because all of those are anesthetics that lull you into a false sense of spiritual victory. The weaker a person is, the more they like to take their anger out on someone even weaker. Once, right after being beaten, Ah Q didn't know where to vent his anger. Just then, he saw a little nun walking by. He spat and then touched her newly shaven head. The attention from the people in the tavern made Ah Q even more triumphant, as if his feat had been recognized. He then pinched the little nun's cheek hard. Everyone burst out laughing, and the shamed nun ran away. Ah Q's trampled self-esteem was now soothed by taking his anger out on the little nun. He was extremely pleased with himself. Lu Xun said, "The weak are always angry, but they draw their swords against those who are weaker." We think Ah Q is despicable for fearing the strong and bullying the weak. But we still see many people at work who are oppressed by their superiors, yet they treat interns and new colleagues horribly. We still see students who are bullied by older students, only to turn around and harass younger kids. We still see fathers who endure frustration at work, only to bring their anger home to yell at their wives and children. We still see people hiding behind keyboards, shedding their insecurities by criticizing others. And we still see, somewhere in our own lives, that we often reserve our best manners for strangers but are quick to shout and lose our temper with those closest to us. Isn't that just like the character Ah Q? The writer Lu Xun once said, "Whoever bullies those below must surely be afraid of those above." That is human nature. The weaker a person's inner self is, the more easily they are bound by external circumstances. When their self-esteem is imbalanced, they must find a way to psychologically compensate and restore a sense of control. In psychology, this is called displaced compensation or displaced aggression. People always feel the need to have control over their own lives. When a person is under pressure, insulted, or suppressed by a source they cannot or dare not resist, their sense of control is lost. To regain this feeling, they need to find a way to restore it. But if they lack emotional control and the ability to identify the root of the problem, they will choose a displaced path, usually by venting negative emotional energy onto a safer target, such as a weaker person or a relationship with less risk of loss. But this is just a temporary anesthetic to restore psychological balance. It cannot solve the root of the problem and, at the same time, it keeps you in the vicious cycle of the weak bullying the weaker. This whole process will keep a person in a constant state of anger, unable to free themselves, ultimately harming both themselves and others. If you realize you are using the spirit of victory anesthetic, when faced with frustration, allow yourself to redirect your emotional energy. Just stop and give yourself 3 seconds. Take a deep breath and name the emotion. I am angry because my boss criticized me. I am frustrated because my children won't listen. I am feeling angry because things are not going my way. Naming the emotion like this helps bring the distress back to the rational part of the brain. Then, you can shift to a different path, helping you release negative energy safely instead of spreading it to others. For example, we can write in a journal, exercise, do housework, or practice mindfulness meditation on our emotions. The Buddha taught, anger is a fire that burns oneself before it burns others. Only by looking directly at the fire within our hearts can we prevent it from burning down the entire forest around us. A strong person is not someone who has never been angry, but someone who knows how to channel the flow of anger into a cool stream that nourishes themselves and others. If you cannot change the wind, learn to adjust the sails. If you cannot change others, learn to master yourself. That is the best way to escape the stupor of the spirit of victory method. The more someone wants to show superiority, the more they reveal their inferiority. After teasing the little nun, Ah Q, for the first time, began to fantasize about having a woman. While working as a hired hand at the Zhao family's house, Ah Q saw Amawu talking to him, and suddenly knelt down, proposing, "I want to sleep with you." Ah Q's method of courtship terrified Amawu, who trembled and ran out the door screaming for help. When everyone found out, Ah Q lost his job, was beaten, ostracized by the villagers, and had to leave his hometown. After that, no one cared what happened to Ah Q, but half a year later, he returned. People suddenly saw him wearing new clothes and being very generous. The news that Ah Q had become rich spread quickly. He boasted that a successful scholar in the city had taken notice of him and that he even had the ability to help the scholar. As a result, people began to respect Ah Q. Delighted, Ah Q continued to brag about the things he had seen in the city. He was so proud that it seemed his status in the village was about to equal that of Master Zhao. In that moment, Ah Q felt he was at the pinnacle of victory. But what was the truth behind this story? It turned out Ah Q had joined a gang of thieves but was only a gatekeeper. When people found out Ah Q was lying to show off, they despised him even more. People who constantly desire to appear superior in the eyes of others will always find ways to show off. And those who use false successes to prove their superiority are, in fact, those with the deepest inferiority complexes. Adler wrote, "The feeling of superiority is just an inferiority complex walking on its head. It's like when we love to show off where we've been, what we've eaten, what we have, who we know, and how talented we are, just to prove that we are different from others and to seek admiration and validation. But the more we use external things to adorn ourselves, the more we reveal the emptiness within. Truly experienced people are often very calm. Truly confident people know how to be humble, because they do not need the admiring gazes of others to shine in their own simple and serene light. When people live with clarity, they no longer need to display a sense of superiority on their faces, compromising, making excuses, taking anger out on the weaker or those closest to us, or showing off about ourselves. This is the trinity of the anesthetic spirit of victory method. Having one of these signs is an indication that we are living in a delusional stupor. Having two means we are truly addicted to the spiritual opiate. And usually, once one appears, the other to follow, forming a dangerous trifecta. It paralyzes our ability to face the truth, lulling us with the feeling that I'm still okay, but in reality, we are moving further away from self-mastery and the ability to build sustainable inner strength, like a person lost in the desert drinking a mirage. It only temporarily quenches the thirst, but cannot save one's life. If you want to escape this stupor, you must first dare to face the truth, that you need to change, that you need to transform. When we realize that the deep-rooted cause of every compromise, every fit of anger and blame, and the habit of showing off are all manifestations of a lack of self-mastery, only then can we begin to change ourselves. Instead of making excuses, learn to take responsibility for your choices and actions. Instead of taking anger out on the weak, find healthy ways to release it. Instead of showing off to seek validation, quietly cultivate real competence. When we are whole within, we no longer need an anesthetic to seek a false victorious self. In Lu Xun's stories, there is never a shortage of onlookers who stand by, mock, and point fingers. Every time Ah Q was bullied, there were always people around, holding their stomachs in laughter and adding fuel to the fire. One time, Ah Q happened to pass by the scene on the night of a robbery at the old Master Zhao's house. Simply because he had a history of petty theft, combined with the sloppy investigation by the officials at the time, Ah Q was arrested for robbery. As an excuse to crack down on robbery and kill one to warn 100, the authorities sentenced Ah Q to death. When Ah Q was led to the execution ground, he looked around bewildered. The eyes of the people there converged into a force that was both dull and sharp, both indifferent to Ah Q's wrongful conviction and yet as ravenous as a pack of hungry wolves. For the first time in his life, Ah Q felt fear. After Ah Q died, public opinion was, of course, negative, calling him a bad person. But for the most part, they were still unsatisfied, thinking that execution by firing squad is not as spectacular as beheading. Furthermore, that ridiculous convict had been paraded through the streets for so long without singing a single line from an opera, making their trip to watch a complete waste of time. This is the spectator mentality. The outsiders who watched Ah Q laughed at him, found him despicable, but they didn't realize that they themselves were living by different versions of that same spirit of victory, because people find it easy to rely on criticizing and mocking others to create a sense of superiority for themselves, to temporarily forget their own helplessness and emptiness. The spectator mentality in the true story of Ah Q is not something that can directly kill a person, but it creates an environment of collective oppression. No different from today's lines of comments on social media. Every share, every haha reaction to someone else's tragedy. Therefore, the next step on this journey of growth is to learn not to criticize, not to judge anyone or anything. Ah Q is a small character, but also like a giant, multifaceted prism that reflects the many hidden corners of the human soul. Before laughing at something, we should ask ourselves if, deep in our minds, We are using some form of spiritual victory to hide our own fears or shortcomings. Many people who read this work clearly see in it the shadow of an oppressive feudal society or the limitations of the Shanghai Revolution. That is indeed a major layer of meaning that Lu Xun wanted to convey. But within the scope of this sharing, we will not delve into politics or history, but simply read a work together, pause to reflect on the Ah Q psychological phenomenon, and from there, quietly look within ourselves. Because ultimately, the inspiration for living comes not from judging others or society, but from an awakening within our own hearts. It is the courage to admit that, to a greater or lesser extent, a part of Ah Q still exists in each of us. And only when we are brave enough to look it straight in the eye can we step out of self-deception to live more consciously, more lovingly, and more authentically with ourselves and with our lives. Thank you for listening to today's video. I will end it here. If you found this video useful, please share it with those who need it. Don't forget to give me a like, hit the subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell to catch the latest videos every week. Once again, thank you, and see you in the next videos.